Okay, so you've survived poetry, and week one. You're a quarter of the way done in class. Now it's on to short stories, and you've got 4 of them to read. And like I did with the poetry, I picked 4 short stories that are very different from each other. So you're getting a variety of approaches to writing, a variety of styles, and a variety of subject matter. So first you've got Lydia Davis and her short story Television, which is what some people would call flash fiction or a short story, short story, sorry, or prose poetry. So it's something that's sort of in this in-between space between what we think of as a typical short story in prose and what we consider poetry. Again, Davis is talking about television as an escape, but as something that's part of our everyday lives, so similar to what some of the poets were talking about. She's got different narrators, different narrative voices going on, different perspectives in the story. But overall, she's sort of asking a couple of questions of, is TV inescapable? Is there any way we can exist without it? Or, is it even possible to forget that television exists? You can ask the same questions about social media, cell phones, things like that. People try to unplug or say they're going on a break, they're not going on Twitter this week, or they're not going to use Snapchat or whatever. But even when you say you're taking a break for 2 days or the weekend or whatever, is it possible to forget that the internet, that television, that movies are out there waiting for our attention? I don't have the answer to that. But that's what one of the things Davis wants us to think about is what is our relationship to television? What's the place it has in our lives, even if we're not paying complete attention to it, even if we just have it on for background noise. Why do we need it there? Something to think about. Don DeLillo is another author who sort of experiments with styles. He's a novelist too, and his novels are very long and complex. But Videotape, the story you're reading, is another piece of flash fiction or a short story. Here, it's a very different approach than Lydia Davis. So you'll see how even when you're telling a short story, you can come at it from 2 different angles that are completely different. DeLillo is a lot more about emotion and our reaction to the story as a reader than Lydia Davis is. And I don't want to give too much away. It's hard to talk about a short story or flash fiction without giving a lot of things away. But it's really important to think about your reactions to the story and how DeLillo is making you react to the story. What does he do as a writer to kind of get at you? And what does he make you feel? Rick Moody's Videos of the Dead is what people might consider more of a traditional short story. It's definitely longer than the other 2. It's the longest short story you'll read. And a lot of students find this one difficult. Partly, I think, because of the length. So take your time with it. Make sure you're giving yourself enough time to read it. If you need to reread parts of it, that's fine. The other reason why students find this difficult is because it's a more serious story. It's a little bit sadder, or some people think it's sadder. Some people find a lot of hope in the story. But it's a different attitude than a lot of the poems that we've read and the other short stories. So keep all of that in mind, and take your time. Like I said, if you need to reread, if you need to take breaks, there's no wrong way to read a story other than to not read it. Whatever you need to do to get through. And if you have questions or you're not sure that you're understanding things correctly, you can always ask me, whether that's coming into WebEx during my office hours or sending me an email or setting up a phone call or whatever. So just stick with the story. I think it really pays off in the end, because Videos of the Dead is about a museum where people have sent videotapes, sort of the last video of someone in their family or a friend who's died. So they take the last video that they were in and send it to this museum to be preserved forever, which sounds really weird. Except, this is something that's happening now. We make videos, we take pictures, we post them online, we share them to friends. But once you've posted them online, they stay there. If you pass away or your friend passes away or relative, their Facebook doesn't automatically disappear, their Twitter doesn't come down, their accounts don't go away. So all of these things can still be out there. So what's the difference between us sort of creating these memorials online or keeping these pages open or their existence, and what Moody's talking about in his story? There's kind of a fine line between reality and fiction here. So try to think of it in that way and how it relates to what happens in real life now. And then it doesn't feel so strange. It doesn't seem like such a strange idea for a story. Maybe still a little strange, but maybe, not as strange as it initially seems. Speaking of strange stories, George Saunders' story, Brad Kerrigan American, is a really strange story, and it may be the strangest thing you ever read. But he's using satire, parody, and surrealism for a purpose. And the question on the discussion board is about why he uses surrealism and satire. Why does he make such a strange story? Sorry, my cat's meowing in the background. That's Banjo again. So whenever you read something, your goal should be, one, to understand what the author's telling you, but then to think about not just what is the author telling me, but how is the author telling me? What tools is the author using? How are they approaching telling this story? And how does that method change the meaning or change the way I understand it? Because you understand a funny story in a different way than you understand a sad story, but they could essentially be telling you the same message at the end. So, think about, why does Rick Moody make such a serious, sad story? Why is it so long? And think about, why is George Saunders, so just weird? Why is this so weird? Because it gets real weird. And like I said before, sometimes you have to think through the weirdness. What about this weird universe that George Saunders has created relates to real life? How can we see through his exaggeration to get to what he's saying about our lives now? Because he is, George Saunders, again, another living writer, still writing, writes a lot of humor stuff. But really, he's always writing about our lives today. So how do we get from real life to the version of life that's in Brad Kerrigan American? That's something to think about. And that wraps it up for the fiction. Next week is nonfiction. So we've done poetry, fiction, and now we'll move on to some creative nonfiction. And so we'll see how other authors are writing about the movies, about TV in nonfiction ways, but still doing it creatively, still using different techniques than you would see in a news report or a sort of informational article. All right, well, enjoy the stories. Take care. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be back next week. Bye.